gonna build a fictional character together. I want you to think of a trait, either a personality trait, a character trait, a physical trait. So do you have your contacts? Okay, perfect. So we have all these different contacts, right? I want you to take a look at that name, but don't show anyone. You got it? Just close your phone, remember that. Type in a random 4-digit number. Hit multiply, type in a random 4-digit number again. Multiply, and then a meaningful 4-digit number, and lock the phone. So we have a name, we have a trait, and some number. Amir?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
And this Amir guy, horns? Horns? So Amir with horns. Open up the phone. What's the number that you got to? What does this look like?
No.
Phone number, right?
No.
Stop.
Go to your keypad on your phone. So phone, keypad.
Okay,
Type this out.
297? Is it?
What is good, everybody? It is Reed, and welcome back to How to Make Your Magic Better, episode 7, I believe. This episode is going to be great and one that I'm super excited for. This episode is all about framing and how to frame your tricks properly, what framing means in magic, and some of the things that you can do with framing. And I gotta be honest, you can do some really incredible things. If you don't know what I mean by framing, make sure you stick around and watch this video. This video is for anyone, any level of magic. This can really help you. You know, the stuff that you can do with the way that you frame your tricks are unbelievable. And there's so many little techniques and nuances, and these are the things that are really gonna help you make your magic better, guys. You know, you can learn as many tricks as you want, but if you don't have some of the nuance, a little bit more fundamental things like what I talk about in these series, you're only going to get so far. So this episode is one I am super excited for. Framing is something I love to play with, love to work on, and so this episode is really special to me, and I know you guys are going to love it. So I just wanted to say before I jump into this video, Sean has a Facebook group called The Corner. It's a great group. It's a very positive environment. It's a magic group on Facebook, but it's a small community. We're all about positivity and, you know, being encouraging, no negativity. And so it's a great group. And over there, me and Sean do a lot of jams, and a lot more are going to be coming, and you guys, you know, we'll throw up the link often, and you guys can join and come hang out. So if you want to get that opportunity to come hang out with me and Sean and the other members and jam magic, make sure you join that group. I'll leave a link in the description. The Corner. Please come join. I can't wait to talk to more of you guys. So with that said, let's get into it. This is How to Make Your Magic Better, episode 7 on framing. So what is framing? If you're not clear on what framing is basically how we set up an effect or how we construct an effect. So the method is what us magicians are so interested in, and how it's gonna happen. But the effect is what the spectator experiences, and in my opinion is more important. The method doesn't matter so much as the experience the spectator gets is what you want. And so how you set up this effect, how you construct it, is very much tied into framing, right? So you can choose the way you want the effect to be presented to the audience. You can take the same method, the same trick, and present it in different ways based on how you frame it. This differs from, you know, just using patter or storytelling. Some of the things I've talked in the past, audience management, these all fall into how you convey your effect. But this is specifically what you say to get the audience to really understand and really see the effect from the lens that you want them to see it from. This is essentially the reality that we create surrounding this trick, okay? To be a little bit more clear in what I mean, it's that idea that a trick, the reality of what the spectator experiences from that trick can be presented in a lot of different ways. And I'm going to get into some examples to make that more clear if you're still not totally clear. That's essentially what framing is here. It's how the trick is conveyed to the audience. It's essentially, as magicians, it's the lies that we make up, the lies that we tell people. They're not always lies, but a lot of the time they are lies in magic that we tell people. But the specific wordings we choose, the specific lies we choose to tell that, you know, create this whole either perspective or reality or psychological idea in their head without them even thinking about it. And that conveys the effect in the way we want it to be conveyed. It's important to have the spectator see the effect through the lens that we intend it to, a lot of the time. Not always, but You see, if you just do a trick and let's say you don't talk, that leaves it up for interpretation. And there are some styles, some magicians who can do that sort of thing, but it's very difficult. And if you leave it up for interpretation, either they're going to be confused, they're not going to understand what happened, they're going to think something different happened, either more or less impressive, well, often less impressive though. And if you're telling a story or really trying to convey something, or you're trying to lead into another trick, if they're not on the same page as you, it presents a problem. And that's why framing is so important in magic. A quick example, if you guys watched that prosthetic magician video that I did where I had my sister appearing to be the magician performing tricks on Omegle, but really it was my hands and her face. It's a funny video, go watch it, I'll link it up there. But you can see how some of the basic effects that are really, really strong, you know, like I think I did Chicago opener, you know, a great trick, but she didn't really have any experience in magic, right? So she had no idea how to frame it. So her delivering that trick, the reaction wasn't as strong. The spectator seemed slightly confused on what was happening. I mean, he still understood there was magic, but you see the importance of framing in a video like that. And you can see how that might differ from when you do Chicago opener, if you have some experience performing magic, or how you've seen it in other performances. You can just tell the spectator's a little bit confused, not exactly sure what to follow because of the frame that was put around that trick. He didn't know how to interpret it. So now, why is this important? Well, I've touched on it a little bit, but what's really neat about framing is you can almost do anything you want with the right frame. You can create a total, it's like an illusion art in itself. You can create this total reality, total illusion about a certain effect when you're doing something different or not nearly as impressive or whatever it happens to be. It's just about conveying that to the audience. And that's why I think effect is so important, because you can, and I have experience doing this, and I'm sure you guys do too, you can create such a more powerful effect from the audience than what you're really doing or what's really happening, right? And I guess that's kind of what magic is. Fundamentally, we're doing things that are simple or more obvious, but they're just secrets to us that we know the answers to. So to them, they're not sure how it's done. And if we frame it properly, their mind can go down that path, right? So because they don't know what's going on, right? They don't know the method. Their head is going to go, depends on the person. If they're analytical, they might go to the most logical explanation. If they're more creative, they might go to something a little bit more out there. But there's a bunch of different paths for their mind to go down, right? Think of it like that. There's a bunch of different paths for their mind to go down. And also those paths are sequenced from, let's say, the explanation that's bad for us because it either kills the magic, it's too obvious, it doesn't make it as impressive, it doesn't present the trick properly, or to the best explanation for us, which would be, you know, making our magic trick seem more impressive, more incredible, more impossible, right? So we want to steer them down the paths on this side of the spectrum. But if we leave it open for interpretation, everyone's mind's going to go down a different route, right? And a lot of times you're going to run into people who are just like, oh, you must have did it this way, or oh, that's not as impressive. Maybe they don't even vocalize it just in their head. They just say to themselves, well, I mean, I guess that was kind of cool, but he did it this way. So framing is so important because you can direct your audience down the path you want them to go down, or at least very close to that path. And then their mind will be exactly where you need it to be. And there's a lot of powerful things you can do with that. It really helps convey an understanding of the trick too, especially if there's a little bit confusing trick, or you have to remember, laymen don't know anything about cards or magic for the most part. So the tricks that are classic to us, or the tricks that are obvious, or it's easy for us to follow what's happening in a trick, but for them it's not. So it's really important when we're framing that we create a logical sort of plot for the magic to follow, and something that they can easily follow so they can understand. If they don't understand your trick, it's not good. Okay, there's nothing you can do about it. It can be the most amazing trick, but if they don't understand it, it doesn't matter. And that ties in very closely to just interpreting your effect, right? It's all about how they interpret your effect, what matters, and this is how framing is important. What's powerful about framing is we can have this idea of how we want the effect to be conveyed to the audience, right? We can have this idea that we want to convey, and it's so powerful because we can nearly ensure that that is going to be the message that is conveyed, or the effect that is conveyed, with the proper framing and proper context. And you might have that trick that's not exactly what you want, but you can frame it to make it what you want. And it's so powerful in the ways that we can make the audience believe or see the trick from the lens we want them to see it through. And perhaps the most important reason for framing that I think, or one that I love to use it with, is you can make your magic so much stronger through the correct frame and the correct lens. Like I was kind of mentioning, like a simple trick explained in the right way, or the right lies told at the right moment, or the right things said at the right time, can really make that trick so much stronger, hit so much harder. Sometimes it's about telling them in advance what's going to happen. Some tricks, it's really important to tell them how the trick's going to end. It'll make it hit harder because they know what's coming. And if they know what's coming, they get the sense that they can look for what you could be doing because they know where it's going to end. So then when you fool them, it's even that much stronger. Some tricks we need to keep the end ambiguous because of the method, or sometimes it just helps improve the effect, right? Other times we can take very simple methods, very simple things like a cross-cut force, say. I don't know if this is the greatest example, but I'm just kind of playing off it here. You take the cross-cut force, for example, such a simple concept, such a rudimentary thing that we feel like shouldn't fool anyone. And if you tell a spectator how you did a trick involving the cross-cut force and you expose that to them, I am sure they will feel like an idiot. You know what I mean? Because it's such a rudimentary thing, but it's so great. And that is just how we frame it. We frame that trick as a real cut. You know, framing can be so subtle, right? It's, you know, you always hear, don't say, oh, I'm going to mark the position of the cards with the cross-cut force when you do that, and don't draw attention to you like marking the position. And you know, I don't think it's that huge of a deal. I've done it. I've not done it. It doesn't make a ton of difference in my mind. But what's important is that when you come back to this moment and you say, all right, let's check where you cut to, right? Simple as that. As simple as saying, let's check where you cut to. It's something logical and it follows what happened before. So then the audience isn't questioning anything in their mind and they're just willing to listen to what you said. But that simple sentence is a frame. We have just framed the whole context of a cross-cut force around that one line, and now they believe that that's something so simple as forcing that top card by just not having their cut count at all. But we framed it that they've cut the cards wherever they want. And if we just make it clear, you could have cut the cards wherever you want. That was a free choice, blah, blah, blah. That frame has just taken that super simple thing to the next level, right? And that's a super minor example. And this compounds on itself when we get to more complex, more impressive tricks. It really can take a trick from okay to amazing. And I'm going to try to give you guys some examples as we move on in this video. So how to do it, how to frame your tricks, your effects properly. Now, this is such a nuanced, such a long topic. I could probably talk about this for hours. You know, if you ever are having trouble framing a trick or you want some advice on something specific, feel free to send me an email. My email's in the description. But these tips, I'm going to try to be a little bit more broad, but still specific enough that they can actually be of value. But it's very hard to give specific information. So my first tip here is to make sure you set up everything. For most tricks, at least, setting up and explaining to the audience, walking them through the trick at a very first grader level, right? A very basic level, explaining, you know, you're shuffling the cards. You're making all the decisions, you're doing the dealing, you could have chosen any card. All these things that we almost tend to take for granted as magicians, or tend to think, they're almost like, what's the word? Cliche lines, or I don't know what the word is, it's not coming to me right now, but they're things that we all say, all of us, all the time. So those things are really important, and there's a reason why we say them. Saying something as simple as you shuffled the deck and you could have chosen any card you want, as obvious as that seems to us, it helps frame the impossibility of the trick in the spectator's mind, because they might not think about that, right? They might not make the conclusion that I could have chosen any card, right? If you do a simple prediction trick and you don't make it clear at how many choices, how impossible this coincidence is, it's just not going to hit the same as it would if you really embellish all of this, right? And for example, right, in a prediction trick, let's say it's a 1 in 52, right? That would be the mathematical odds of, you know, you write down the name of a card and then they pick or name any card out loud. The chance that you get it right is 1 in 52. And so one level of framing is to make that really obvious, make it really clear that they could have chosen any card, they had a free choice, I had no influence, all that stuff. That really gets them to understand the power of the 1 in 52 choice. Now in the next level of framing, we can take that to the next level. We can start to include little lies, right? Like that part's generally true, right? I mean, if it's a force, if we force the card, then no, they didn't have a free choice and we're lying about them having a free choice. And that's what we got to do. But let's assume they named it out loud, for example. Then it is a 1 in 52 choice and everything I would have told them is true. I'm just making sure they understand that, and that's part of the framing. Now I can take that to the next level by sort of inducing other little lies into this to make it feel even more impossible than 1 in 52. So one thing, I would never want to utter the words 1 in 52. I would more want to say, think about how random this is. You could have chosen any card you want, like you had a free choice. Making that feel like a choice rather than assigning the number 52. 52 seems like a small number in the grand scheme of things, right? Saying words like there's tons of possibilities you could have chosen. You could have picked any card you want. Those words, emphasizing tons, any, choice, random, stuff like that, makes it feel to them psychologically that this is a much bigger choice than 1 in 52. Now I think 1 in 52 is impressive because in their mind they would have to think, well, every time he does this trick, he must get it right if this is a magic trick. So if he keeps getting 1 in 52 chances right, then it must be compounding on each other. At least that's how I look at it, but I know not every spectator is going to look at it that way. That's how they should look at it because it's a magic trick and presumably we didn't just get lucky, right? So it's compounding all those 1 in 52 chances of every time we perform it, but you can't expect your spectator to think like that. So we need to do other things like some of these little lies to embellish and make it even feel like a more than a 1 in 52 chance. For like in any card, any number, for example. I talked about this in the recent any card, any number jam that I did with Sean. And this is a really nice little touch to an any card, any number, because truthfully that trick is a 1 in 52 chance. Some people get it confused on the math, but it's 1 in 52, guys. Basically, the card is already in a position, so they don't have to get the card and the number right. The card is already in a position, right? The Jack of Hearts is already in one of these spots. So then there's a 1 in 52 chance that they will say the number that the Jack of Hearts is in, right? So it's 1 in 52, any card, any number. What isn't 1 in 52, but is 1 in 2,900 or 2,700, whatever 52 times 52 is, somewhere, some much bigger probability, is if you were to predict beforehand the number and the card, and they were to say both of those. That's a 1 in 52 that they say the number, and a 1 in 52 that they say the card. So that is a much bigger chance, a much bigger possibility, right? That's like 1 in 2,900 or something like that. So the thing is, you can frame a basic any card, any number that's 1 in 52 as that. And all you need to say is, think about how random this is. You shuffle. There's thousands of combinations of cards and numbers that could be together, right? You could have said any number, 1 in 52. You could have said any card, 1 in 52. There's all these chances. And the chance that they have come together in this one moment would be truly incredible. So that right there, I framed it in the way that it is thousands of possibilities rather than 52, even though mathematically it's 1 in 52, but again, no one's going to really question that unless you're performing for mathematicians, engineers. I might not use that if I know they're good at math, but even if they say, hey, it's 1 in 52, it's whatever, it's fine. You just move on. Like I'm trying to frame this, and 90% of the time, no one's going to realize that little mistake in the math or that little lie I'm telling to make it feel much more impossible the way I'm framing it, right? So like I touched on a bit, explaining is super important. Being very clear what you're doing, either what's going to happen, what the effect's going to be, and some tricks you don't always want to give it away beforehand, right? And being clear so the audience can follow, it's just going to help them. If they get an internal sense of what's going to happen or what is supposed to happen, it's going to hit so much harder, right? If you take a card and you put it in your front pocket and you say, you are going to pick the mate to that card, that's probably a good time to tell them that beforehand, because that whole time now, when they're going to select the card that they want to choose, they're going to be thinking, oh, it could be any one of these. Whatever choice I make, I only have one chance at this, right? They're going to understand that. Whereas if you don't tell them this and then they take out the card and then you say, I have this card in my pocket is that mate, they forget the moments when they were picking the card. They forget how fair it was. They forget that they could have had any choice. They don't get that same feeling that they could have had any choice, right? So it's very important, in my opinion, in that context, that you tell them what's going to happen beforehand. Justifications. There are a ton of justifications that we make as magicians for things that don't make sense. We do this all the time. There are tons of examples of it. Little things we do that make no sense, that we do just because usually we need to because of a method. But just creating a justification that sounds like it makes sense, something that's just quick, we just slip it in there, it makes the spectator not question why we just did that thing, and the trick flows smoothly. That is an aspect of framing. We're taking this strange thing that we do, packaging it up, framing it, and then giving it to the spectator so that they don't question why we're actually doing it, right? And we do this all the time. There are countless examples. Subtleties, too. A lot of the little nuances and things I talk about, especially in my tutorial videos, I always try to give a subtlety section to explain to you guys a little bit more of the nuance and the detail going into these sleights. And some of these little subtleties, like, showing a card just before you do a move or whatever it happens to be, those are part of framing. They frame that control. They frame that trick. For example, if you take a card and you put it in the middle and you say, this is the 7 of hearts, and you push it in, and then it comes to the top, I mean, no one's gonna buy you because you didn't frame it properly. But if you show the 7 of hearts going into the middle and you show it, that's a little subtlety, right? And then you push it in and it comes to the top, much more impressive. That's a very dramatic example, but it illustrates the point of subtleties and how it's important to have the right subtleties and convincers too, right? Like little things like that we do to convince people that things are happening is all part of the frame and puts them in the frame that what is happening is in fact happening, right? And this is all very nuanced things, all things that are kind of very subtle. As you get further into magic, you pick up on these things, you start to value the importance of them more. But I just urge you guys to pay attention to these things, especially if you're a beginner or intermediate and you're starting to learn, pay attention to the nuance, the body language, the subtleties, some of those things that are in the middle of some of my tutorial videos. And I know they get a little long, but those are some of the things that are key, right? And finally, one of my favorite strategies for framing is recapping, right? This is something that you hear a lot of people talk about, but I really think it's one of the most powerful techniques in magic. And it basically plays on the two things, the short-term memory of our spectators and it typically not being that good and them forgetting things that aren't deemed important. And they're not super familiar with cards and magic, so we can tell them what we want to tell them, and it all ties into framing, right? So recapping is the idea of, at the end of the trick, either usually right before the reveal is the best time to do it, you explain what we already did in the trick. One, it reminds them, and two, we can lie like hell, right? We can lie, tell them, not huge lies, but we embellish everything that happened. I could have shuffled, but I tell them they shuffled. Maybe they only cut the cards, but I tell them they shuffled. Maybe I did like a riffle force, but I say, you could have chosen any card you want, and I go like this, so it makes them feel like they had a freer choice or whatever. You could maybe even play it off like they named any card. You could play off a peek as a thought of card. All these things that you can do with recapping, because they're not going to remember all these little details. They're not going to remember how they picked the card, if it was like this or like this. They're not going to remember what exactly happened. So it's important that we remind them, but it's also a great opportunity to start to sneak in some of these little framing lies to frame the trick, put it on that pedestal to where when the moment hits, when the ending happens, when the climax hits, they're going to be like, what the heck? I shuffled, I did all this stuff. Maybe it's not even totally true, but as long as they believe it, that's the effect, right? So recapping is a wonderful strategy, probably the best thing you can do. Always try to have a little moment of recapping. It does not have to be long. And typically it's the same things for most tricks. You shuffled, you could have picked any card. You had a free choice. It's all the same little sentences, but they really do make a difference. So some examples. I wanted to give some great examples here of framing. So I did talk about the A-can a little bit, how you can frame that probability, that chance a lot better. And this is the problem with any card, any number. Again, something me and Sean talked about in that video that you guys should really go check out. We get into a lot more detail on any card, any number, but it's not a good effect because most magicians don't do it right. They don't either explain what the effect is to the spectator, or they don't convey it properly. They don't say if it's a prediction, a mind reading, a coincidence, a real magic, like whatever it happens to be. They don't convey that, and it's really important with that type of trick. Like, yeah, I agree, it's not the greatest trick for laymen, but it can be really good if you frame it properly. And I don't think it needs a crazy story to it. It just needs to be framed. And the way I like to frame it, as somewhat of a coincidence, and I'll frame it, I'll use that little subtlety of making it feel like a much higher chance than 1 in 52, you know, by saying you could have chosen any card, any number. There are thousands of combinations of cards and numbers, and your two had to come together to create this moment, right? And then I'll the whole time I'm emphasizing how they shuffled, they named any card, they could have named any number. If they would have named one higher, it would have been this, one less would have been that, a different card, whatever, all these things that through the whole time I'm saying. And then when I finally have that card at that number in my hand, I will say, remember, you could have chose any card, any number, and you got the 7 of hearts or whatever, right? So that whole trick needs to be framed. It needs to be perfectly framed so that the spectators understand. A good philosophy for any card, any number, it's very good, something I go by. I always say, try your best to make the audience love any card, any number as much as you do. As magicians, we all love it. Why don't the spectators love it? Well, that's what we should address when we're performing it. Try to make them love it as much as you do. That's my philosophy. For example, with that Soe can, the recent sleight of hand, any card, any number that I put out, wonderful trick. Go check that out as well. I don't know what corner it's in. But with that, it's very interesting because there's one moment that I want to talk about here that's a great example of framing. After they shuffle and name a card, you have to go through the deck and cull out their card, right? And cull it to the top. Now, it's a little strange, right? If we didn't say anything there or didn't explain why we're looking through the cards, then a lot of people might conclude that we were looking for their card. But instead, it's the framing here that makes us be able to get away with this and makes this a moment that they don't even remember, and a moment that makes this trick so powerful. I say the whole context is you're going to try to guess the position of your card in this deck. Okay, and then I say I'm going to be a nice guy and give you a little chance. I'm going to go through the cards really quick and you're going to get one chance. So now I can take all the time I need, but I also go pretty quickly because I said I would. But that helps camouflage that I'm looking for their card. Like, for example, let's say their card's a 7 of spades. I'll even stop on it. I'll stop here and kind of be like, you got it? You see it? And then as I close, I'll execute the cull. And then that makes it even more fit into that frame because I'm really showing them that that's their card, right? If we don't do that, that moment is a little weird, doesn't make sense. Why are we now going through the cards? You know, if I didn't explain, I'm gonna have them try to guess their number, and I was just like, all right. And I just started doing this, and then, you know, that's obviously me looking for their card. So that's a great example of why framing can change the whole context of the trick and make things that don't make a lot of sense like that make much more sense. And then when I hand the deck out to shuffle a second time, it's sort of logical because now we've just looked through the deck. So to make this more impressive, they should shuffle it up again so we actually don't have an idea of where the card is. So all these things are very logically thought out and create that beautiful frame. And then another little example is a trick lie detector, one that's very simple, but a lot of us know, where we're forcing the card and then you're mind reading it basically. And the typical plot is to do a lie detector plot, and I do think that's a great plot. So I usually say like, you know, I'm gonna ask you some questions and you can either lie to me or tell the truth, and I'm gonna try to figure it out. This is a lot of fun. It's kind of like a game. Spectators love games, and then you just go through, is your card red or black, and then you tell them if they're telling the truth or lying. It's really easy. We know the card. We either peeked it or we forced it, so it's very easy for us. But think of it like this. If I went like this, and I said, remember that card, and then I threw it in the middle, and then I said, 5 of spades. Obviously, I saw it at some point. There's no hiding that. It's the too perfect principle. That trick is too perfect. There's only one way I could do it. That is why it's important to take your time with tricks that are so simple like that, or if you're gonna do like a peek, that you put some time in between the reveal or whatever, or you come up with a justification that maybe kind of explains it that's not a peek. It helps really hide that, right? So for me, with lie detector, that's why I take a lot of time. I ask a lot of little questions, and I do make it feel like I'm trying to get a sense for reading them. Maybe I'm feeling their pulse, whatever the case is, but it totally destroys that method, puts the trick in the right frame, and makes it a million times more impressive because I didn't just say 5 of spades. I must have saw it. I'm really pretending like I'm showing a skill. It's a complete lie, but it really frames the trick, and it's super important. So how to improve your framing in magic and how you frame your tricks? One fun little strategy that I used to play around with a bit that I actually think is really valuable now that I reflect on it. Practice conveying the same effect in different ways. Take a trick, take an effect, usually something simple works better. Present it in one way. Let's say 2-card Monty, for example. you do the classic. You present it as the gambling demonstration, you versus them, a little bit of a game. They got to follow the one card, right? Do the exact same trick, same handling, create a brand new frame around it, right? Create a whole new concept and try to present that to your spectator. Present the same trick in a totally different way. You guys will be amazed at what you can accomplish by just what you're saying when you're doing a trick. Try doing 2-card Monty as a transposition rather than a gambling cheating demo, right? Say, you know, you're gonna hold these two, whatever, you're gonna hold these 2 cards, I'm gonna make them switch places, blah, 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 whatever. Try that and you'll see the effect is totally different. Might be stronger, might not be as strong, but you can see the power of framing and get some practice doing it that way. So trying these different frames is super important, and on the same trick, it really helps you see what works and what doesn't. Try different justifications for things too. Like if you have a move in a routine that's a little weird or doesn't make sense, or you need a justification for it, try saying one thing and see how that works. Try saying another thing, see how that works. Justifications, it's always important that they don't raise suspicion, they just kind of fly under the radar. They just make enough sense that the spectator doesn't question it and we move on, right? One thing that's fun that kind of ties into that is try weird moves that aren't always necessary in the middle of tricks. Like if you really want to practice, these are some of the things that you should do. So for example, what you would do is take a move that's really weird, really unnecessary, or doesn't make any sense in the context of the trick, but do it and then come up with a justification for why you're doing it. You can think about it beforehand, but go and then try it out, and you'll see that you do the weirdest things that don't make sense at all, but the audience won't question it because they believe your justification. Justification is such an amazing little psychological thing that you can play with. And tying into that, be confident. When you're saying these justifications, you're framing, be confident. It's a very, very nice piece of psychology. Audiences tend to be willing to follow instructions, and they won't question what you say if you say it with confidence. If you believe what you're saying, they will believe what you're saying. And this is so true, guys. If you just believe what you're telling them, they will believe it too, and it's really incredible. You can, you know, like I said, justification's all about making a little bit of sense, enough sense that it goes under their radar and they don't question it. You say it with confidence and you are set. They will never question what you're saying, basically. And the last little tip is do some mentalism. Try that if you're not into it. Mentalism does require a lot of justifications typically. I find there's a lot more weird things, like why would I have someone write something on a billet and then take it back and then give it back to them? Like if I was doing a billet peek or something, right? There's a lot of things you got to start thinking, well, what's the justification for that? Maybe I'm helping them fold it, or then I give it back so they can sign it. Like, you see what I mean? There are weird things, and I find mentalism's a great genre to practice justification. A lot of the propless stuff too doesn't make sense without justification, or it's weird until you frame it and justify it properly. So try out mentalism if that's not your thing. I think you'll get a lot of nice insight that you can apply into your card work and other magic as well. So that is it, guys. How to Make Your Magic Better, episode 7 on framing. As always, these episodes of How to Make Your Magic Better turn out way better than I expect. Every time I have a little topic right here written down, a few little headings I want to cover, and I just get on these rants and these ideas just pour out. They're so much better than I have written down, which is amazing, and I'm very happy with that. And I actually love making these videos, so I still have several topics that I want to touch on. I think framing is really, really important. Possibly my favorite one of these I've done yet in terms of the content and what I love. I love framing and justifying things and that sort of stuff, right? My philosophy, there's a justification for everything and anything, okay, guys? I've never ran into a situation where I'm like, you know what, I can't use this, I can't do it, because it doesn't make sense. If I'm in that position, which I am all the time, I'll be creating a trick and I'm like, this doesn't make sense, why am I doing this? There's a justification, I just have to find it, right? It's a mission, it's a goal, it's a puzzle. I know there's a justification for anything, you just gotta find it, guys, okay? But really listen to this video, you know, take some of these tips, some of these subtleties, some of these touches I've given you guys, practice them, really take this stuff to heart and really work on it. Framing is incredible, the things you can do with it, and this video was a whole ton of knowledge on that, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now, welcome all the new subs. Thank you guys so much. It's been such a journey. At the time I'm filming this, we're about a week past the date that I uploaded my first YouTube video, so just over a year, and I hit 1,000 in about the first year. And it's been a crazy journey, guys. Thank you. I really appreciate it. You know, I've had a lot of fun. I've been contemplating this YouTube thing for years now, and I'm so glad that I jumped into it and did it. And got a lot of great stuff coming, you know, so much material and just fun ideas, you know. I just can't wait to keep giving you guys the best content that I can, and I hope that you guys are still loving it. You know, now let's keep working. Next goal, you know, hit the next 1,000 and then see where it goes from there. I'm just gonna keep doing my thing, and you know, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. So with all that said, let me find my Jack of Hearts. I said I would start trying to end most of my videos with a question to you guys. My question in this video, if you make it this far, what is your favorite justification for a move that doesn't make sense, or favorite justification for something in a trick that is a weird moment, or something like that, something you almost find comical when you do it, that it flies by, something like that, you know? Give me that in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. And with all that said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.